It happened, Newcastle fans. It happened, Newcastle fans. You weren't dreaming, you weren't asleep, you haven't just woken up from a coma. Newcastle United beat Paris Saint-Germain by 4 goals to 1. 4 goals to 1 in the Champions League, and let the whole world wake up, if they hadn't already after last season's achievements, to realise that the Geordie boys are really, really here to compete and not just to prop up that league. I'm going to try and dissect things on this video in what has been one of the best weeks supporting this beautiful football club in all of the 20 plus years that I have supported them. And in this video, I'm going to look a little bit closer on how Eddie Howe, the man after 3 defeats that was unheard of in his time in charge of this club, some people arguing for him to leave, some people were saying he wasn't elite, how he's just done one and got one over on a manager with pedigree from Barcelona on Europe's top stage. Eddie Howe's Mags are absolutely cooking. The stove is on fire, and we're going to be looking at why on this video. So do us a favour, Newcastle fans, make sure you stick around. Come on, if you're watching this, clap. Come on. If Eddie Howe's Mags ever deserved a clap, it's right now. Yeah, I have been clapping, I have been cheering, I have been dancing, I have been somersaulting, I have been catapulting, I have been doing backflips like Obafemi Martins ever since that full-time whistle went. And do you know what? For this video, I don't normally promote it. There's a bottle of brown coming. Cheers to Eddie Howe's Champions League smashing Mags. In fact, whilst I'm sitting on this, let's watch the highlights one more time.
Miguel Almiron with the goal, and just listen to this pace now. Dan Burn for Newcastle, Sean Longstaff, another Geordie boy with a big goal in the Champions League. Shea's going to shoot. Oh my word!
Oh, God. That was pretty much 90 minutes summed up in 30 seconds. And if anyone's wondering, this is the same bottle that I absolutely demolished that French baguette with. Tied it up on the bottom. Well, I wasn't going to waste it, was I? Any excuse for a good old bottle of brown. Oh, that tastes sweeter. It tastes even sweeter. Newcastle fans, if you are new round here, do us a little favour. Drop us a little likey Lou. Oh, it's even better my hand's going towards the bottle. Any excuse for another sip. Whack that subscribe if you like my opinion by the end of this video. And I'll tell you what, Newcastle fans, if you do want to check out a match vlog, it's just a little bit further down. Longest one I've ever done. I had to cut it down, by the way. That's like 20 odd minutes. I had to cut it down. I didn't want to go into the half an hour territory. But oh, Brownhill's got a kick. But it was definitely one of my favourites. And the best thing for me doing these videos, yes, they can be time consuming. Yes, having 2 jobs as I do at the moment, and a little puppy who's just walking around my feet as I speak. It can be difficult when you get in from midweek matches to put it together, and sometimes they can be a bit delayed. But my God, I have a memory now. If I ever want to look back on PSG, and I've got no doubts about it, I will want to look back on PSG in the Champions League. I can, and I can watch the fans I spoke to. You name it, I can watch all of it back. Won't that be amazing? So yeah, if you want to go down and check that out. So, if you're anything like me, you've sat and you've thought about it and you've watched the highlights and you've just processed everything. And yes, my match vlog, for anyone watched it, might have sounded the most passionate I've probably ever sounded at the end of the video, maybe a bit over the top. Some might argue that might be the case, but it just hit us in the sweet spot. It did. I sat back in the stadium. Every single one of them players did us all so proud. Like, literally, if I could go and buy every single one of them a beer, give them a pat on the back, I would. I would do it in a heartbeat, because from the first whistle to the last, they gave us everything we could have dreamt of going into that game. We talked about the importance of the crowd relaying down to the players. that worked a treat. We talked about our high press, how we can put teams in chokeholds on our day, and that worked an absolute treat. And every single thing that could have gone right and that we could have done well, we did well, and then some. From the atmosphere in the stands all the way down to the management and the players. And it was one of them perfect nights that we will savour for the rest of our lives as Newcastle fans. I've got no doubt about it. Whether you were watching at home, whether you were watching in the stadium, you name it, it was absolutely incredible. But what I want to talk about on this video is why Eddie Howe, a man who, you know, everyone's allowed their opinion. And when I make content, I understand people will put their opinions out on what my discussions are. When we got beat against Brighton, and it wasn't a good game just before the international break, it wasn't, it was a very, very bad performance. There were so many comments of Eddie Howe, not out as bluntly as that, although I did see some on Twitter, out of his depth, not elite, not going to win us a trophy. Well, the reason that really annoys me, and as I record this video, Simon Jordan for TalkSport has said something very, very similar, that he thinks Eddie Howe is good, but he's not good enough to win us that trophy that Newcastle fans want so bad after that Champions League performance. I get so frustrated with that because there is nothing, absolutely nothing substantial out there to back up those claims. Every manager who we look at as successful now, from Guardiola down to retired Alex Ferguson, has started somewhere. They've had bumps in the road, and I tell you what, half of them have not achieved what Eddie Howe has achieved as early in his career, from taking Bournemouth from League 2 to the Premier League. Probably doesn't get talked about enough. Taking Newcastle from relegation fodder to the Champions League does not get talked about enough. None of these things do, and all of these achievements are going on his CV. Oh, but it was the money, it was the money. Look who scored last night. Dan Burn. People were laughing about him going into this game, coming up against Mbappe. Sean Longstaff, one of our own. People are still looking at him with such disrespect on podcasts and fan channels and football discussions, and it annoys the hell out of me. But people will still go back to the argument of money. And of course, yes, we've added Botman, we've added Bruno, we've added Isak, we've spent lots of money on Gordon. But again, the core of the team is so substantial from the era before under Mike Ashley that people still talk about now as being one of the worst owners in recent English football history. And Eddie Howe, for me, is doing all the things at such a young age. To say that he hasn't actually managed at that many clubs, he's gone through different leagues of football, he's doing all the things to suggest that he will be an elite manager. And that is why it worries me and it scares me so much with our ownership, that when things maybe aren't going so well, like our fan base in some quarters, we will get nervous and we will start freaking out. And I just don't want it to happen, because I think Eddie Howe is so obsessed with what he does and so tactically solid. And look how he improved defensively as a coach as well when he went off for Atletico, that we need to stick with him. We really, really do. So how did Eddie Howe against PSG in his first Champions League home game get one over on Luis Enrique, formerly of Barcelona, who's got trophies galore on his CV? Let's look at that a little bit closer. But to sum up, he was tactically absolutely fucking class. He really, really was. But let's look at those tactics a little bit further. So first and foremost, his press. We know what it's Newcastle style. We know it's how Eddie Howe likes to play. It's what we do really, really well at home. But the way we implemented it against this PSG side was so articulated to suit the opposition. It was absolutely fantastic. PSG at every single opportunity tried to get the ball wide to their fullbacks, their wing-backs. And we were so solid. Every time the ball went wide, we split into a 4-5-1. And Tonali supported Gordon on that left-hand side as an example in breaking up that press. And many, many times, it was basically we were either outnumbering them or we were 6 against 6 in that front area when we were pressing them in their own end of the field. And it worked every single time. Next up has to be the midfield battles. Now, going into this game, Ugarte in PSG's midfield was probably their strongest outlet in that central area. They adopted a bit of a double pivot. Not only did we outnumber that double pivot, but Bruno and Longstaff were so tight to him. I'm not going to go as far as saying we man-marked one of their biggest threats in midfield, but we put a pretty decent job on him. And when he was outnumbered, Gordon was able to support Isak because Tonali adopted that left-hand side of the field whilst Bruno Longstaff focused on that central area. And we absolutely outnumbered and dominated that centre of the park. And that was always going to be a key battle, as it is in most matches. But a team of the quality of PSG, You win those middle areas, you cut off the ball where from centre-backs and full-backs can play it in, and then they're forced to go a little bit longer. We all know Mbappe wasn't really up for it on Wednesday night. I've already mentioned a couple of pairs on this video when it came to pressing, and that's what we did again in their final third. Incredibly, the way Eddie Howe set up for us to press in pairs normally meant that we numerically outnumbered that PSG defence in midfield 5. So your pairs for this match, for the majority of the game, were Almiron and Isak, Gordon and Tonali, and then Bruno Longstaff, like I just said, pretty much taking Ugarte out of the game in midfield. And there were so many times when PSG had the ball in their own half, and they were really, really struggling. And if you look at how we won the ball back for the first and the fourth goal, it was through them not really being able to get out, and their defenders, mainly Marquinhos, being forced to try and play the ball into an area where we were always likely to win it back, and it was just working time after time. There was times on Wednesday when it almost looked like we had a numerical advantage in the game. That's how solid Eddie Howe had it. Oh, it just gets nicer every time I talk about these tactics. Another big issue in games that we've lost or thrown away, if you look back to that Liverpool game at St James's Park, mainly this applies to the Brighton game though, when we were just awful, was the times that we were pressing in the game was leaving gaps between the lines. And if you look back on the goal that the likes of like Ferguson scored against us when he got that hat-trick, when he blasted it in when no one closed him down, yes, we were looking towards midfield issues with Bruno. Is he defensive? Are we lacking Longstaff in there? There was lots of different talking points. But the press can sometimes let you down, that when you push out and one pass then gets suddenly played in quick passing football, you can pick that press out and there's loads of gaps. What we did really, really smart on Wednesday is that rigid 4-3-3 suddenly to a 4-5-1, like I talked about earlier in this video, worked well. So when Ugarte got the ball in midfield, we didn't press him until he had the ball at his feet. If we'd have pressed him when he didn't have the ball and then he receives it, that would have left more space for him to just play one pass, see you later, and they would have been in behind. And when you've got the likes of Mbappe and Dembele, that would have been really dangerous. We were so disciplined in waiting for him to get the ball, and then we were on his arse, and that cut off any pass for him to be forward, because Longstaff, for example, if Bruno was pressing Ugarte, would be marking his options that he would normally be looking to pass to, rather than everybody flooding out and leaving that space between midfield and defence. Again, absolutely pristine. Sometimes I have to just say, what the hell were you on about, Matthew? I said before this game that some of the biggest dangers, although they were going to commit a lot of men forward that would give us chances, that I can kind of argue I was right on. I did say that their fullbacks getting forward would obviously be really dangerous. Hakimi obviously being a big name for them. What Eddie Howe decided to do was basically let them play the ball out wide to those guys. He was happy to do that. And the way we set up in the second half, because we couldn't always play with intensity because it's not realistic. As much as we have such engines in our team, to do that for the full 90 minutes, you're going to get gassed and you're going to burn out. When we dropped off a little bit and didn't play with that intensity, our midfield formation was so rigid we didn't allow any balls down the centre. Instead, we wanted the ball out wide so Tonali and Gordon could get straight on that, and we were quite comfortable there. There was a lot of trust with that in mind on Dan Burn and Trippier, and I thought they both did excellent. Obviously, Dan Burn to get his goal, but generally speaking, Eddie Howe decided, let's let them have the ball out wide, we'll cut off anything in the middle, and I think we can have the game there if we double up a little bit. And it worked again incredibly. I'm drinking for every amazing bit of tactical work from Eddie Howe. I'm going to need more bottles. Finally, for me, I'm not going to talk about Eddie Howe. Yes, it's all well and good, he has the tactics, but the players deserve the final point. Everything gets mapped out by Howe. They do it all in training, but for them to come out and do everything wonderfully, the discipline in the press, the discipline in the organisation, taking chances when they were put away, people like the Cells, who I have to give an honourable mention out before this video ends, on what an incredible job he did against all the odds. Oh, Lascelles is in the defence. I said it, you said it, everybody said it. He was absolutely brilliant. He had one of the best players in the world, quiet as hell. Quiet as hell. He literally wouldn't have even known he was playing against Mbappe. He probably needed reminding off his mother the next day. And fair play to him. And if Lascelles hasn't forced his way into a lot of Newcastle fans' respect books, then I don't know what he has to do that. Because for me, now we are looking at a player suddenly overnight. who's a pretty respectable option when Botman is out, as opposed to a week ago when everyone was like, oh, God, no, Botman Lascelles is in. My God, that's dreadful. Fair play. But the players did everything that Eddie Howe asked perfectly, and it's not going to work every time. We've seen it in some matches. The way we play is not always going to work. We will leave gaps. We will lose that discipline in the press. We will probably drag too many over in a wrong moment in time. It's not going to work every time. We know these tactics that Eddie Howe likes to play with the press, with the holding of the ball, with the intensity, with us wanting to be on the front foot almost every match we play. It's not always going to work wonderfully, but look how wonderful it's worked in the time he's been in charge. We have only lost to Arsenal, Liverpool and Man City at St James's Park. And I think that's now 38 games if you include PSG on Wednesday. That is an incredible record when you look how long that takes. That is mental, absolutely mental. And we are building something here. And Eddie Howe is only grown as a coach. But the players did everything he asked of them. The management, the tactics were spot on. The atmosphere was spot on. And it was just a perfect night. Now, I know this isn't all... I do like to go into tactical insights, of course I do. This is a bit of a different video for me, but I came away, I could easily just jump on and say we were class, we were class, we were class. Fucking hell, Eddie Howe's mags are absolutely class. But I did want to look at things a little bit further on why. Because if ever there's a man that deserves us to look at things a little bit further, it's Eddie Howe on what a good job he is doing against now some of the best teams and coaches in world football. Eddie, you can have my babies. You can sleep with my missus if I actually had one. You name it, it's yours. I would buy you 20 of these if you wanted them. You're one of the best managers I've ever been lucky enough to watch manage my beautiful football club. And thank you all for such an amazing night. Newcastle fans, let me know your thoughts on anything PSG related. Have you taken it in yet? How many times have you watched it at the highlights back? That's what I want to know in the comments. Does it get better than that? How far can we go in the competition? There's so many questions to answer. I just wanted to give Eddie Howe on this video the tactical praise that man absolutely deserves. And I also just want to give a huge shout out to every single comment that I get on my YouTube. And I seem to say this every time. It does mean a lot. I'm a fan first and a video maker second. I love my football club, but I love creating content, whether it's the jokey stuff I put on social media that I kind of put on YouTube because of copyright. Whether it's me vlogs, whether it's videos like this, I absolutely love it. Black White Banter was the best thing I ever did. So anyone who's ever came up to me on a match day and said hello, drops down in the comments, whacks that subscribe button, whacks the like button. You're absolute legends, and I'm happy to be on the journey with you supporting this beautiful football club under this current management and regime. Newcastle fans, of course I'm going down to West Ham. Of course I am. They're coming thick and fast down to London in the car with the call dog on Sunday morning, early doors for that 2 o'clock kickoff down in London. It won't be a patch on PSG 4-1 at St James's Park, but we do go again. So whack that subscribe if you want to see those match vlogs, and of course there'll be a match preview coming up. Keep soaking it up. Keep watching the match highlights, Newcastle fans, because that is without a doubt a game we will keep talking about for many, many years to come. Cheers to Eddie Howe's mags, cheers to Wednesday, and cheers to the memories we now have for a lifetime, and I'll see you on the next one. Away the lads!